going on, Jerome's? So, unfortunately, the sun came up today. Stupid sun. Nah, I'm just playing. It's a beautiful day. Birds are chirping and stuff. Although, maybe not in Minnesota because it's like minus 25,000 degrees. Yeah, but it's time for another Vikings news dump. He sees you when you're pooping. So, I understand that the wounds are still fresh, from the Vikings. It'd be one thing if the Rams and the Lions games were competitive, just like one score games, like the first time around, even though, yes, the Rams game was 10-point because of the safety, but just getting waxed. We're going to need more wax. It's rough. It's rough, man. But it's all right. After you go back, so only one team is truly happy at the end of the day after every season. And some teams' happiness are just some teams are just unhappy sooner rather than others, right? It would have been nice to make a run this year. I thought that this team, when Darnold didn't have his head up his ass, was as competitive as anyone. The defense can be legit when they're getting home, but it just wasn't meant to be, right? But looking back, on it, it's always so very rarely do you see teams like the '99 Rams just come out of nowhere. 200-1 shot. Kurt Warner, formerly working high V. Trent Green gets hurt. A greatest show on turf. Dick Vermeil. Mike Martz is the OC. It's very rare. You see teams leveling up. Just like every single, because even like back in the day. So the Shula Dolphins, they lost and then they got back onto things. Do you know that Shula was the coach of the Baltimore Colts in the Joe Namath Jets Super Bowl guarantee game? It's kind of great, isn't it? But the Dolphins eventually built their way up, got through the AFC playoffs, won Super Bowls, went perfect and all that stuff. And you've seen it with the Cowboys with Landry, the Steelers with Chuck Noll, the 49ers with Bill Walsh, and the Bears with Ditka, right? They couldn't beat the Giants, they couldn't beat the 49ers, and eventually they did. And then same thing with the Giants. They couldn't beat the Bears, they couldn't beat Sean Landetta, and they couldn't beat the 49ers, but eventually they won a couple Super Bowls. And then the Cowboys did in the 90s, and then da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Well, I guess the Patriots sort of came out of nowhere in 2001, right? But that's what happens. Like, it's almost like you have to pay your dues, right? Maybe this is going to be one of those years where it's just paying the dues. And maybe 2022 as well, because this thing is a marathon and not a sprint. And yes, this is full-on cope, 100%. It is what it is, right? But the Vikings thanking fans kind of wish you delayed this a month. You know what I mean? Yeah, but overall, there was some great moments this season, and that's what it comes down to. Now, would have been more fun if the Vikings just went like 9-8, and just missed out on a wild card, and you're like, they overachieved and they tried real hard and it was good, but I don't know. Look, there were some great moments this season, like the 97-yard touchdown against the Niners, the beatdown of the Texans, beating the Packers twice, which is great. Some come-from-behind wins, finding ways to win ugly, and all that stuff. Slinging Sammy Darnold, even though it ended with quite possibly the two worst games as a quarterback in Vikings franchise history. Like, it's Darnold versus the Rams, Darnold versus the Lions, and then it's Josh Freeman. That's the three worst games in Vikings franchise history, right? But overall, this is definitely a season that they can build on. I think a lot of young guys got some great experience, and also I like that it was very definitive of what the Vikings need to work on. The Vikings need that interior defensive pass rush. The Vikings need to completely overhaul the interior offensive line, and the Vikings need to have J.J. McCarthy be the guy, because Darnold is not it, right? So I like that it was very obvious, all these things, right? Because if Darnold had been good, but they came up short, maybe it's still a tough decision. But J.J. McCarthy is revved up, ready to go. He's ready to be that guy. And maybe the interior offensive line wasn't so bad. You're like, we could just patchwork this thing again. No. Full on, tear it down to the studs, rebuild, extreme home makeover style. That's what we need. All right. Also, who knew that this was the high tide of the season? Not only did the Vikings not win a game after this, they didn't play a satisfactory quarter. They played the 8 worst quarters of Vikings football in probably a decade after this moment. I don't know. it's easy to point to this as like, well, maybe they shouldn't have celebrated like the one Super Bowl. I don't think that's it. I really don't think that's it, but optics-wise, it's not great. And I don't know. You can just see like Kevin O'Connell. Man, it doesn't get better than this. It didn't. Something like that. I don't know, man. But Schefter on the McAfee show talk about Sam Darnold and his contract and his case, because legitimately Sam Darnold over 2 games, 8 quarters of football, probably flushed $100 million down the toilet, which you think that it would clog it up, especially if it's in like 20s. Schefter said this, quote, I still think Sam Darnold is probably the number 1 free agent quarterback available. The last 2 weeks clearly impacted his value in a negative way, but we'll see how much. The Vikings had Jay McCarthy win the wings, and they really like him. And so the free agent quarterbacks of this class are going to be Kurt when he gets cut, Aaron Rodgers when he gets cut, Russell Wilson, Zach Wilson, Darnold. It's like being the tallest member on the South Korean basketball team. Good job on being 6'2". That's what it is. So, I mean, Darnold's going to get paid, except it's probably going to be like $20-25 million a year when it could have been $50-55 million a year. Because, like, peak Darnold, like, if Darnold had played well, you know, the remainder of the season and the playoffs, he's getting $50 million a year easily from a team. Probably not the Vikings, but in free agency or a tag and trade. But now a tag and trade isn't even viable, right? Because if the franchise tag is put in front of Sam Darnold, he might just sign it. And then the Vikings lose all the leverage of moving on from him or rescinding the tag or having to trade him, so they'd be stuck. So now I think that's off the table. I think he's just going to leave in free agency. And like I said, you know, the last 2 games shouldn't completely delete, you know, the very good season that Darnold had. I mean, the Packers game was probably his best game. You know, 377 and 3 touchdowns. You know, had 5 touchdowns against the Falcons. Had 4 against the Texans when the Vikings just took him to the woodshed. Played really well in both Packers games. So, I mean, it kind of sucks that it ended the way that it did when it was so good throughout. It's like the last episode of The Sopranos. I mean, was he shot or was he not? Were the onion rings good? Don't know. Come on, Tone. But also, Justin Jefferson, when he was asked about the quarterback situation moving forward, Kevin Seifert, who is not Carl Gershmidt, who's not. Also, Justin Jefferson won't weigh in on the Vikings quarterback decision. It's not my job to say who is going to be the quarterback or who do I want to be the quarterback. At the end of the day, they're going to figure it out, and whoever they decide to go with, we can work with that. It's in stark contrast of Jefferson last offseason, talk about how much he loved and respect Kirk Cousins, that leaked that he wouldn't sign his deal until he got a firm grasp of what the Vikings' long-term plan at quarterback was going to be. I mean, this is just a complete, I'm done with Darnold. I'm done. We're moving on. We're done. We're done, so. And here's what's great, too. So Jefferson, I mean, he's only in year 5, but he's already starting to get that flack. It's like, oh, Jefferson can't do it in the playoffs. He doesn't have a 100-yard game. Blah, 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 blah. It's fine. But just watching the end of the Rams game, you know, in the Pig F in the middle of the field, just letting that burn in his retinas, burn in his memory banks. Thanks. Love to see it. Now, it reminds me of another picture. Not this one. No. It reminds me of J.J. McCarthy. J.J. McCarthy. After Michigan fell in the semifinals of the college football playoffs to TCU, and then TCU got schwacked by Georgia. You know, McCarthy just let it burn. And then they went 15-0, won the national title the next season, right? This is the only start in college that J.J. McCarthy lost. He did not lose to Ohio State. It's good times, man. So, yeah, J.J. to J.J. is going to feed families, man. Like, both these dudes are dogs, and they want to win. And I absolutely love that for us. It's going to be great. Also, I swear to Christ, if J.J. McCarthy sucks, we're going to have to eat so much poop. It's so funny, man. It's so funny, but he's going to work out. One of the reasons he's going to work out is that Cam Robinson won't be back. So Cam Robinson did a great job for a number of weeks, you know, filling in for Darisaw. Huge shoes to fill, pun intended. But the last 2 games against the Rams and the Lions, he allowed 21 pressures and 2 sacks, which is not good. It's no bueno. So, also, he's still going to get paid in free agency. Now, we had floated the idea, was like, well, maybe he stays and plays left tackle and then reduces inside to guard, I don't think that's going to happen. Like, a team like the Patriots that need a tackle, like, could come out and pay him like $18 million a year. It's going to happen, man. But yeah, the Vikings will get some comp pick credit there, but it definitely makes you miss Darrisaw, who ripped up his knee before the half against in the first Rams game. It's just, if he can stay healthy, he's the next Trent Williams. Like, Christian Darrisaw is that impactful, and that's one of the reasons why the Vikings' run game sucked hind teat later in the season. That's why protection was a huge issue. 71 was not there to get it done, but hopefully he's good to go to start the season. And it's a long road back, but Darrisaw will get it done. Also getting it done. Mike Garafalo. Seahawks are requested an interview with Vikings assistant OC/assistant quarterbacks coach Grant Udinski for their vacant offense coordinator job, sources say. 28-year-old Udinski has been a vital part of Kevin O'Connell's operation and clearly on the coaching fast track. And O'Connell has talked and praised Udinski effusively. Talked about getting Darnold prepared, as well as basically, since McCarthy's been back after his surgery, Udinski's been McCarthy's caddy. Just like, number 9's like, blah, 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 blah. I want all these answers. I want to learn everything. And then Grant is basically the guy just feeding him. It's really good. And the Vikings reportedly did block a lateral move for Udinski last offseason. I think that Kevin O'Connell probably is going to let him interview this time around. So, the Vikings offense, despite the way things went the last two games, the Vikings had one of the best offenses in the league this season, and obviously the brain trust is going to be in demand, although Wes Phillips hasn't been tied to any jobs yet or interviews. McCown's gotten one job request from the Jets, but the Jets are looking at everyone too. But Udinski is going to be a rising star in this game. Also, I can't explain why, but he looks like the Kevin James meme. Like, not like father-son, but if both these jabronis did a 23andMe and turns out they're like second cousins, I believe it. Or cousins, first cousins once removed. Go ahead. There's just something about it. Maybe I'm wrong. I always thought that, well, I obviously, like, computers and AI does this now, but I always thought that I would be really good in like the FBI or CIA in terms of like facial recognition, because I annoy the bejesus out of my wife, for a number of reasons. But whenever we're watching a TV show, whenever like I see an actor or actress that I recognize, I will prattle off like all the different things that we've seen them in, and she'll be like, "Oh, I don't know who that is. It's Johnny Depp," or something like that. No, just like third tier like backup actors or something like that. Or so I play a lot of poker, and I never forget a face. Like, whenever I see someone that I haven't seen for a while, I vividly remember how many times they took my money. Usually by hitting like a 3-outer or something like that. Don't know. Anyways, Kevin Seifert, again, who's not Carl Gershman, on Diamond Dallas Turner. It's just hard to know what the Vikings have there because he played so little. 8 snaps last night. His 315 regular season snaps were fewer than 44 other defensive rookies. He's one of the youngest, still 21 until next month, so we wait. And I know that we live in a microwave society and we want things now. And it's like, well, if the first round pick isn't contributing right away, he must be a bust. But there's a lot of interesting circumstances with Turner. All right, so they went and got him for the long haul. And we've said so much. There's going to be another presidential election before Dallas Turner's rookie deal runs out with the 5th-year option. So let's get out of here, right? And 315 regular season snaps, which is roughly 25% of the Vikings' defensive snaps this year. They played around like 1150. But 3 sacks, 20 tackles, and an interception, all while Turner is being asked to play a different position than he did in college. Like, in college at Alabama, he was just rushing. Basically, he was John Grenard in Saban's defensive scheme those 3 years, across from Will Anderson. But now he's dropping into coverage. Guys, first career interception against the Seahawks, look really damn good and natural dropping into coverage as well. Plus, he's playing a different technique than he's used to, and he's learning one of the most complicated defensive schemes in the National Football League. Oh, yeah, you had AVG and John Grenard, 2 Pro Bowl starters ahead of them, as well as Patrick Jones a second. You're playing inside-outside, career high in sacks with 7. Also, you had Hottie Ward, who's one of the coach's favorites, getting some work in there as well. So there's only so many snaps to go around. And frankly, playing 25% of the defensive snaps. That's kind of what we envisioned his role was going to be coming in, because yes, he's going to be one of the best speed rushers in the game, but also he's got to add size, he's got to add frame, he's got to add muscle to his frame, and that's perfectly fine. The Vikings knew that coming in. If they wanted an instant impact player, they would have taken Jared Verse, which, we saw Jared Verse in 2 games this year. But, I mean, Jared Verse, he went to Albany, went to Florida State. He's literally 3 years older than Dallas Turner, right? So his ceiling in terms of development, it's a lot more capped than Dallas Turner's is. Also, the years of his prime is going to be less because he's already 3 years ahead, right? So let's check. Oh, by the way, Jared Verse, even though, yes, he made the Pro Bowl, he only had 4.5 sacks playing 885 snaps. So he had 1.5 more sacks than Turner, and he played 3 times more snaps. Not saying, I'm just saying, right? Also, how did Turner make the Pro Bowl? Yeah, scoop and score against the Vikings, whatever. I mean, you vote in the regular season. Actually, you vote with 2 weeks to go in the regular season. But he had he's 4th on his team in sacks. I don't know. But again, let's check in on things, and let's compare Jared Verse now at age 24 versus Diamond Dallas Turner in 2027 when he'll be Verse's age. So let's just see that. Let's just see when Turner has a couple more off seasons in the program, and also gets a couple more snaps, because AVG and Grenard will eventually start aging out, and also, I mean, Turner is going to clearly be edge rusher 3 next season, and there will be spots where Flores, if he stays, hopefully so, will be able to work him into a package. So. Again, let's just hold off a little bit. Like, I know that people want to write him off so fast because that's what people do. It's like, oh, he's another Lewis scene. How? But we'll see. Anyways, but yeah, I'm fully on the Diamond Dallas Turner train. So if he doesn't pan out, we have to eat a lot more poop. A lot of poop today. Also, the Vikings, since the season's over, can start signing players to futures contracts. Now, generally what it is, it's players are on the practice squad, so they don't have a formal contract, signed to a futures deal, added to the 90-man, retain their rights throughout the offseason, and they get that work in. Aaron Wilson, Texans beat writer. Former Bears corner Reddy Stewart is signing a futures contract with the Vikings after being pursued by numerous teams around the NFL, per a league source. And Stewart, UDFA out of Troy. He's 5'11", $183. Had 2 interceptions for the Bears in preseason. Got in 1 game. Played 18 defensive snaps for the Bears Week 9 against the Cardinals. Did have a forced fumble against Marvin Harrison Jr. Perhaps you heard of him. It's a good time. So it's good to add bodies in that cornerback room, because the Vikings are going to need it. Lastly, Aaron Schatz. So Aaron Schatz is the EPA, DVOA, blah, 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 stats analytics guy. The Vikings had a good season. I know a playoff loss is tough, but fans should appreciate the wins. Don't tell me how to live. We have to normalize the idea of watching football should make you happy, not sad. So I know that we're generally like more positive than like the average fan or content creator or whatever, but generally it's kind of how we approach life, right? And we do say, like, some people take sports way too seriously, and you got to think that there's probably some booze involved. There's probably a couple jelly beans in a wager or a parlay involved, but I mean, people get straight up pissed, right? And again, not trying to adjudicate on how people should be fans, but I feel like if your emotional well-being is too tied up in a sports team, it's probably not a good thing, right? Because like we said at the jump, only one team is truly happy at the end of the season, right? So 31 times out of 32, you're just going to have a bad year. I don't know, man. Like, obviously yesterday sucked and the day before sucked, but life moves on. And we're out of free agency. And I actually, the whole meme and trope of, next year will be our year. Brr, brr, brr. I actually think that's a good thing, right? And it's not just because you're the lovable losers, but I think you can't go back and change the past. It is what it is. And having a bright outlook for the future, no matter what. The victor is not victorious if the defeated does not consider himself so. So just because they knock you down, like, you only lose if you stay down. All right, so let's get up, retool, refit, get better, whoop somebody's ass. And this year can be that stepping stone to get to where the Vikings need to be. So there you go. Also, these ladies from the 98 game, like they redid the photo, right? Like the Minneapolis Miracle or something like that. All three of these ladies are probably someone's grandma now. It's crazy how time marches by. I was just like a mouthy 13-year-old kid. Just like, don't worry, we'll be back. Maybe not. Anyways, that's it. Vikings news dump for this beautiful Wednesday. You guys are the best. You know what to do. Skol. Production value.